At least we got the intro, Joe. Welcome to the second recap of Tactical Crouch, where we sit down on Mondays and just look what the weekend brought us. This weekend, not that many games.
Not great.
And not that many high-quality games, certainly.
That's very true.
Yeah, it's sort of unfortunate that we didn't have the other homestand going on as well, which could have mended over some of the things that we had to witness. But
most definitely.
I guess that was really a viral issue, if you want. Like, the flu is not kind to the
That's one way to put it, yeah.
to the Overwatch League this season, is it? So, But let's start with some housekeeping, so I can make John proud in this. As you can tell, John is not with us right now, and it forces me to host and produce. So expect this to be as scuffed as you probably think it will be. Otherwise, thank you for supporting the show. I saw the Patreons are really coming together. Like, we're at over $300 now. Amazing support. Thanks for that. Follow us on Twitter at @tactical_crouch. Tweet us questions. Like, if you have topics, even like tweeting me topics that you want to talk about. I cannot promise you that I will talk about them in my content, but it definitely might give me an idea of where I want to go with it. As always, like we are on a new schedule. We're trying this out. So Mondays and Wednesdays around this time, we're starting with it's 11 a.m. PT, right? Is that when it is? Yep. Yeah,
pretty sure.
8 p.m. CT. That's what I'm used to, and we're recording at that time now with the new format of having a recap show and then a preview show on Wednesdays, unless we get a guest on, and then we'll incorporate them somehow.
We'll keep you posted. Don't worry.
Definitely. As always, and I cannot promise it for this show, but generally watch and listen on anywhere you can get podcasts, and as well as YouTube. You know your podcasts app. I can't promise you this will show up on RSS. We will see how this goes. Then again, you might not want it to, so depending on how this goes. So, okay, let's get into the news this week. Not many other big news around the game. Not really any big patches coming in. The only thing, and I'm not even sure how accurate that is, was the Netflix show around Overwatch.
Yeah,
even though
about some cartoons and some anime, which, you know, cool.
Yeah,
if you're into it, I suppose.
Kind of weird that that this is popping up. Generally, like from what I've seen, is it seems like it's only confirmed that it's the Diablo and it's not the Overwatch. Definitely, I'm not sure what the.
I didn't really look into it. I just saw a couple headlines and I was like, "Sweet, next."
I'll tell you for real though. If they get a show going that has the quality of that trailer, I'm watching that.
Yeah, I'd give it a chance. Like if it was something in the same style as like the Doomfist character kind of intro, I might watch it. I might give it a chance.
Sure.
But yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, that was.
I haven't really been into much anime lately. I watched it when I was younger and whatnot, but not a lot of time, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's the question is how the tropes are held, but whatever. We'll see when it's out. Speaking of production and whether or not that will be good, we all hope that the production won't be the same that we had in these recent homestands, and it doesn't seem to me like it's getting better. And that is the annoying thing for me. That I expected like a rough patch. I expected incremental improvements. My feeling is it got worse.
I think they finally come to a solution for so to kind of like break down each of the problems. Like the transitions were always super late. Like you'd get an ad or you'd get a death segment, and then either like Zoe would be clipped or she'd be just like kind of just stuck on camera, like awkwardly like pausing and smiling and doing like some sort of weird pose, right? I think they finally tried to fix that and have like a solution for it, but I think that's still kind of getting figured out. But the observing itself just not great.
No.
It's one of those things that kind of you want to see it and not hear it, and I'm hearing it a lot. If that makes sense, like it's kind of getting in my way. And if it gets in my way, I don't know how to observe. I couldn't tell you good observing, but I can tell you when it's annoying. And a fair number of times I was like, why am I stuck here? I want to go see that.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
and I think it's especially unfortunate because, I mean, okay, the biggest plays from Carpe, like the clutch ones, I think we got a lot of them.
Sure.
I think we missed one of those where it was like a triple kill on Widow. I think we definitely missed. I remember tweeting about it. Like a 4-man shadow on Junkertown.
Yep. Thank God for the stun icons, because we would have never known.
Yeah, and somehow that the opposing team, the match doesn't actually come to me where it happened, but they somehow survived that. I would have liked to have seen how that came to pass. But, I mean, it's the start of the season. Let's hope that people are accustomed to what's actually going on. My problem is that I think it's not going to be easier. Currently, you kind of can adapt to what kind of a meta we're having.
Yep.
And yes, there wasn't like months long like preseason events or something, or even a rigid meta in the preseason where observers could have been in scrims or whatever. It is sort of a newish thing, but this might be every week. And we kind of want to see that every time. So we'll see how it goes in that regard. I think I'm not a fan of the third person ever. I don't think it works ever for me.
No. I think like there are some like really nice shots that you can get like from a third person, but I think you can do that in replays. I think for the most part, like third person almost for like any character is like really jarring. If we go back to like Owl Season 1, like third person Genji blades just they're kind of whipping around, and the character is just too mobile for that kind of like it actually like kind of makes it difficult to watch. Not in the sense that it like makes me nauseous or something like that, but it's just like I don't know what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. I saw it a lot in week 1 with like Reinhardt's, where they would just kind of like position, the obs team would position on Ryan like with shatter and try to like get a third person shatter. And it's just like, but why?
Yeah.
You can just go back to that in the replay. And I think that's another thing as well. Like replays haven't been great. Either they've been in weird spots, or they haven't been in picture, or they're just like kind of useless replays. Like we saw the Carpe one on Nepal Village, where he gets like 3 kills, but it's really not that impressive. And it's kind of cool. I don't even know if we got it on the main feed, but then there's like some weird Diva Bomb ones where it's like, it doesn't do anything. Like, why am I replaying this?
So I think there's like some confusion. I might have actually used the term incorrectly, because that is one where I can never figure out my terminology as well. But third person for me is when you're outside, but still behind the character.
Yeah.
And you're not free cam.
Yeah. Free cam is the artsy kind of like, oh, this is the team. They just capped the point. We're kind of coasting around. The third person is kind of like the over the shoulder shot.
Yeah.
If I'm understanding it correctly.
Yeah, I think free cam works perfectly for me. I would actually,
I'd love a game just completely obstinate free cam. That'd be perfect.
That's how I'd probably watch a lot of those games. I think for anything but really, let's think. Okay, so you definitely don't want free cam for the DPS. I think for almost everything else but Ana and the hitscan DPS, free cam works pretty well. Like, you get an idea how the waltz plays, you get an idea, like, you understand shatter. Like, the Reinhardt himself for a lot of the game is not playing in first person, right? So that works very well. You understand the impact of their abilities. I think that's also true for Diva. You don't need first person Diva stuff. And then, yeah, flex support is kind of nice to sometimes see just how flicky and how good it is on like Zen and Ana, and when they frag or when they have clutch moments. Big nades probably also translate to free cam. And then third person, I think the only application where I've ever seen it work well is actually when there's a Genji blade. Because first person is super confusing, and free cam doesn't drag you into the action as much. So I like it for Genji blades.
I mean, it's kind of known to be a part of that like whole like Apex transition where you start on the Ana, then in a boost goes out, you kind of go to third person Genji, and then you transition into first person Genji. Hopefully I'm getting that right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's fine. Like, we don't have to go for it all the time. Like, yeah, if I had it my way, I just keep it all free cam, get as much of a scope, and then do picture in picture and replays to highlight really, really cool plays that you saw. Either it's a sleep dart, or if it's, you know, somebody popping off on McCree or Widowmaker, you can highlight those plays through the replays.
Yeah, I think that's a fine attitude to have for yourself. I think that would really turn off people to not see the pop off in the moment it happens.
Totally.
A little bit, I have to be honest, I also recognize that in myself.
I mean, yeah, I recognize it. It's just, if I had it, you know, if I could develop my own broadcast, it would just be understanding as much of the scope as possible. If I could just have it, I'd just love to watch the top-down cam. Like, just give me a top-down cam stream. I'd just watch that. Like, I don't really want to watch anything else because I can catch all the rest of it later.
I would watch in the replay viewer live if they gave us that functionality from World Cup.
Hopefully that comes back, because I know that a lot of people are interested in watching that, myself included. So
the only thing that sort of suffers from this is when you're watching. So it's always like, I feel like we have to step out of the analysis niche that we are in, and especially as like content creators and writers, like, we gotta be in on the narrative. And it's fine that in the replay video you see that sick sleep that kills the diva because he drops off the map. If that's not on camera, that's not in the common narrative. You can highlight it, but that's not canon if you want, right?
Yeah.
So to watch that stream is probably pretty important to understand what the general viewer is understanding. And that's where I disconnected last season by having the all access pass streams, where I was specifically on players that I wanted to highlight. I think it's great content to highlight this. You lose sort of like the story that is being told by the observing crew, and that predominantly becomes the scripture, if you want,
the canon. I don't know if I even agree with that. Like, shouldn't you want to kind of shed light on like the truest canon or the truest script?
Sure. It's just,
so that's where you'd get that from the free cam, the all access pass. So like, it might not be public, like in the public discourse, but because you spent the time to look at it that way, now you can actually provide like a different insight and say, hey, you know what? Maybe that isn't the right play. Maybe this is more important. Maybe this is, you know, why this team didn't perform as well, because of all of these points that you kind of accumulated over the season.
I agree. I think it disenfranchises you from the current narrative a little bit. Sure. Also makes it so that maybe you cannot emphasize or empathize with the audience as much, because they are watching a different game in that sense. And you might also, let's be honest, like if you're on one player or if you're doing the free cam yourself, you might actually be missing more information because you're not a skilled observer than you are gaining. And the value is that you get niche information in that regard. If you can highlight that, again, it's great content. It's just hard to see the connection unless you want to take the time, go like, okay, I'm watching the live broadcast, and then I'm watching the replay viewer. I'm looking at all the different angles, and then I'm revisiting the experience. Otherwise, it's just... Sometimes I think that was where my disconnect came from last season, where I was like, okay, this is clearly not the case. But I also was on this player for the entire match, or for the specific key points where he picked that hero or whatever.
Totally.
And how would they know? Right? So yeah.
Not to leave this point completely dead in the water. But is it? Do you like? Where do you think on how that ties into the whole Kareev narrative that we've kind of kicked into a dead horse from last year? Do you think that's kind of why? Is because of how well the observation team or the observer team kind of showed how good he was at Ana and these sleep darts. Do you think that's why that it's so canon?
Yeah, I think that, and he was good at things that feel very impactful,
like
and feel like
impactful, sure.
and feel like they have weight. And in that regard, you will always trigger bias in people. And and especially with recency, like your fat sleep dart might as well be 5 times as important for Roll Stars as it is on week 2, right? Like nobody will remember these games. Like if Outlaws win half their games now from here on out, and therefore that would probably be a play-in slot, then we would think, oh wow, they were terrible. Nobody would remember the reasons and whatever. Like
they just had a rough start to the season. Like it would get kind of pushed to the side and reducted in a way.
Yeah, I think also the average person just aggregates really, really badly in terms of like performance and adds a ton of weight due to recency and due to their evaluation of the points. I mean, it sounds like I'm excluding myself from that, but that's why I was into stats early on in Overwatch so hard, because I recognized that my aggregation was not good, and then I looked at it from that regard and sort of tried to adapt that thinking into my overall analysis, where I'm like sometimes sitting down, taking notes and going like, okay, this player was this good in this game, revisit in 4 months, and then draw a picture based on that, right?
Totally.
Also, I think, it's a memory thing as well. Okay, so then let's get into the games, I suppose. And connect to that, Mate and I have to lose some pounds. Not a bad showing by the Mayhem this weekend. Just to briefly explain, Mate and I started the initiative Race the Mayhem. So for every win that the Florida Mayhem get this season, we will lose 1 kilogram. Now, of course, I went in mind with a realistic amount of weight I could lose and a realistic amount I think they will win. I don't feel threatened by the form that they have. I pretty much think they're as good as I expected them to be. So, in that regard, I was actually also surprised so many people received this so well, and that we got people like Jacob Wolf to join in. I think you're joining in now, right?
Yep.
A lot of people joining in. So if you still want to, I think we can extend, because we were pretty late to the party with this. We can extend like an extension of the lock-in duration. If you want to still participate in this, just tweet at me. I'll have a little database of all the people that participated. I'll maybe write even something about that thing, just to have like an overview and to sort of establish this as a little phenomenon. I'm also planning to just have a little Instagram account or something about the progress that we're all making. I've already reserved the Instagram account Gym Scrims. And if you guys want to share your progress in losing that weight, of course, be responsible with your weight loss. Don't go too hard. I might have overextended my metabolism. I know that with the data that I have and expect the Mayhem, how good they will be, that I could have done that when I was 23. 10 years later, I'm not that confident it will work like that. We will see, you know. But awesome that so many people came in, and awesome that the Mayhem actually make this competitive.
Yeah, finally, it's nice to see the Mayhem actually look okay. You know, I think there's still room for them to be very bad. Continuing on, like even if without hero pools, if they really can kind of continue to be this like kind of or force this double flex support, even though that's not fair, but I think that's the best way to kind of frame it. This Brig Ana style, or this Lucio list style, maybe that's a better way. I think if they continue to force that, I think they're going to get found out pretty quickly. And I think that's what we saw with Philly. But we'll get into that. But yeah, good to see that they're being competitive at least early. I'm interested to see how they adapt in hero pools and if Chris actually is that bad at Lucio that they're just going to play some sort of weird style.
Okay.
2 minutes.
Okay, so let's get into the Outlaws Mayhem series first.
Sure.
Immediately, I was taken aback by the compositions that were being run, even though I was expecting, like I saw BQB, I thought, oh, that's the Sombra I was expecting more of.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't exactly end up like that over the entire series. But what I was also not expecting was just how good of a McCree BQB ended up being.
Yeah.
Right? Like
I think they put a lot of resources into him. Like if you watch specifically that match in particular, you see it kind of I think you see it a lot on Eichenwald, you see it on Busan, Downtown, I think it is, where it's Chris and BQB just kind of like playing the angles, not in such a way that it's like Justice and Corey where he's just like hard flanking and just like rolling behind like Private Ryan type stuff, but he's always kind of on a flank, so they're kind of giving him room to do these things, so he's able to, and it's good that he actually can. So like when you put somebody in a position to succeed, can they actually execute, get the kills? Yes, fantastic. And BQB, it was definitely surprising because I think at least I thought, I won't speak for everybody, but I thought Sio Player was a shoe-in to play both McCree and Widowmaker, but it looks like he's just on Widow duty.
Yeah. Certainly interesting how teams are filling that position.
Yeah.
With unorthodox picks sometimes in terms of like which player is playing it.
Yeah.
With more or less success, if we're being honest, and we'll get to that in a second. But overall, I'm convinced by what the Mayhem has to show us. I think if they continue just like holding that level, currently I would put them as a play-in team. I think a solid one.
I don't know. You think?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
We haven't even seen Asia yet.
I've even if I put them up there, like that still puts them or like incorporate the Asians.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think if from the 2 games that we've seen from them, I think that's fairly obvious that they really don't want to play Lucio, and I think that's very like against the grain.
Sure.
So they have like a style that could be, kind of gimmicky and could catch people off guard. Totally, right? But we haven't even seen how that scrim bubble works. We don't even know if like that style works against it. It could just be completely just demolished by this. So I don't know that, like, if we were just viewing like the Western teams that that we've been able to see so far, yeah, I could totally agree with that. But the fact that we haven't seen, the spark, they're kind of up in the air. Are they that bad? Are they that good?
I mean,
no.
I think, for instance, the spark will likely be better, and they're still in my top 12. I don't need them to be like that. It's just like, for instance, the Outlaws dropped for me out of playing contention.
Yeah.
So they're moving up.
That's fair.
So yeah, in general, I think Mayhem was the second best team at that homestand.
Yeah,
I don't think many people would necessarily agree with that, but based on the Justice performance.
You don't think?
I think because they made it quite close against Philly. I think the general notion is that...
I suppose. I really didn't think that Justice was all that good.
Yeah. Yeah. But, okay, so, of course, they played the Houston Outlaws, and the Outlaws come into the server, and they see Anna Brigade. And they think, let's run Lucio Brigade. Do you think that was the correct solution to that particular problem? Or do you think that was an inflexibility into running into that particular style? Because they seem to amend it later on in the series.
Yeah, after halftime, I want to say it might have been Eichenwald, but I'm not sure. We did see a lot more Anna. And they actually even ran Brig Anna at one point, if I remember correctly. Is it the best case scenario? I don't think so, especially on control. It just feels like you have such a low sustainability. Like, yeah, you have better mobility, You can kind of move as 6 really well. And as we progressed through the weekend, it was pretty obvious that like the team play at once kind of explained and kind of highlighted was it was a bit lacking. So I think Lucio brings people together. I think Brig brings people together. So it was a very kind of like fundamental composition where you can just move around to 6 and just kind of try to steamroll people as a big meatball. But you're kind of fighting into a team comp that isn't necessarily playing together. Like we mentioned before, Brig and McCree are kind of playing on the side, and they have a ton of sustain with that Ana pick. So I felt like the desk even gave them kind of a short stick because they were just like, oh, just engage, be proactive. And I think that's a general like tip that you could give anybody. But I think for this composition, it's about where you're kind of positioning, right? Like, where are you being proactive? Are you being proactive on the Brig McCree to kind of punish their flank style? Okay, I can understand that. But just to say be proactive, I think isn't really fair. And then on top of that, I don't know that even being proactive would have fixed that. I think just swapping off probably would have been better, right? Yeah, I don't think that it was a proactivity issue. I think you could justify it that way, like I said, by running on the split. But I think it was just a rigidity thing, and you saw that kind of fix itself post halftime. But yeah, it wasn't good. I think there are issues with the team in general.
Yes,
that it's not simply team bad. It's more of this is a team that kind of has to find its footing first, and that's again how I think we just kind of describe this team. You're injecting a lot of Korean talent that this is their first time on a mixed roster. You know, this is a franchise that hasn't historically done all that well, so they're trying to figure out exactly what works for them. I expected this team to come out and do some creative stuff, you know, play a little bit off meta, and I guess to be fair, Lucio Brig is kind of different, but maybe it was a bad stylistic matchup. I don't know. But so far, from this weekend, Outlaws, not great.
Yeah, I think, okay, so here's my Outlaws theory, and that overarches over both games.
Sure.
So there are a couple of interesting picks that I've chosen, right? Like they're running a rotation of Raucus and Repel. I think
it's like Repel is more on the Baptiste, if I remember correctly.
Sure, and I think there's you sometimes, like if you have a wide player pool, you want to divide what kind of heroes they're playing.
Totally.
I'm not convinced that Repel has a worse honor than Raucus, but he doesn't need to be in order to not play that particular hero or at all, because I think from watching the Outlaws, it was very apparent to me that they're having communication issues.
Yeah.
And also in the players that played, that also seemed to be communicating in order to, like, to me, we're trying to fix communication, not with great success, but those are the players that are playing that way.
Sure.
We know Blase is a communicative style DPS player, not necessarily a hit scan. We know Raucus is vocal and has a calming effect on the team. We know Jaxe is a communicator.
Historically, he's been vocal.
Yeah. And is probably also the bridge between Korean players and Western players because of his English being kind of solid. And also, as a language teacher, I can tell you there's a big difference between people of the same skill at a language, one of them being hesitant to speak the language, because they don't want to make mistakes, and someone that just goes for it. And this person that goes for it also improves way more quickly. So
right.
Certainly a better communicator probably in that way. And then in everything they did, it was just a lack of cohesion. There were plays that were just unreasonably all over the place.
I think that at first, at least on Saturday, it looked like they were being very patient. So I was kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt, like, okay, you know, maybe they're just playing patient. They're trying to like be cohesive. But as, you know, Sunday progressed, yeah, I think the communication broke down like post execute, if that makes sense. Like once the play was happening, things kind of just went all over the place. But in terms of setting up the play, that's where you kind of saw a lot of the communication, and it wasn't great because of how slow it was. It was like almost too methodical, where it was just like, okay, because we have no communication, we have to start from ground zero. And that's kind of how Baroy explained it, was that because we don't know, we don't have any synergy, we don't have that kind of unspoken rule of like, oh, I know my teammates, I know how they play, like I can kind of adapt and we don't need to speak about it. It's all just, okay, we're going to stand and spawn 1, 2, 3, go. We're going to go here, 1, 2, 3, go. We're going to advance. And it's just a slow, clunky mess. And then once the play happens, then everything goes out the window. Like then it's like, we don't have a plan. We don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. I also think
they have like a general like win condition of like, use your alts in this way. So it's a very much like they're getting their sea legs. They're trying to figure out how to kind of play the game from a foundational level. So hopefully we'll see them progress, but yeah, start was not great.
I don't know don't know anything about that. It seems to me about why those issues arise now, because like Outlaws weren't looking terribly in this preseason. I think once again, and not a lot of people will like this, but meta is a gamble. And if you're gambling, first off, it's a gamble on finding out what actually works and applying that and putting hours into that. Then it is a gamble how well you can run that based on the idiosyncrasies of your team.
Mm-hmm.
Which players play well together? Which players have the heroes to support it? Which players communicate? Do you have enough communicators in a particular meta that then lets you play communicators as well as the preferred roles? It seems to me that it was all like Outlaws were running in the preseason, maybe a composition or predominantly compositions where Blase was in, hydration, not sure how much he was involved there. Of course, we also don't know how much he communicates. My take is probably not terribly a lot.
Yeah.
And then they could just play that way, and there was no reason to develop in other styles. Let's not forget, there are teams that absolutely won the absolute meta lottery right now. And one of those teams is Washington Justice. I, for not a second, buy the justification of only having 7 players that pre-mentioned, saying like, oh yeah, we're kind of happy that we have such a small roster because now everyone knows we need to be flexible.
That doesn't make sense.
That doesn't make sense to me. Everyone's been splitting. Like, it makes sense in terms of like trying to keep your comp structure in place. The players that need to be flexible are the players that are pillars for your communication structure. Nobody else. And actually, right now, it pays off to have specialists like McCree and Widowmaker beasts that probably... Do you think XCI is shot calling that team? No, he's not. Probably. He's belting people's heads off and beaming them off the planet. Like, that's what's happening. Do you think Decay is shot calling like every move and macro-managing that entire team? No, they're not. And the concerning thing for me then is if you just run into an unfortunate meta situation, we don't know how much longer that will be for the Outlaws specifically, but if they're unlucky for a long time, even with hero pools, depending on what kind of bans the randomizer decides on, then again, we don't know how severe the nerfs will be. So I mean, I can like if they want to stay true to their message of we want to nerf heroes more quickly, May is the first on the chopping block. That's the hero that currently the meta is focused around. Very few times have we seen matches outside May. Okay, Justice had some
Justice
of those.
Probably the only team that I can recall off the top of my head that didn't play May, at least on some maps. So
it doesn't necessarily mean that May has the highest play percentage. I think that's still Ryan, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably Ryan, yeah.
But yeah, like they want to take the nerf bat to that hero, and then maybe it falls into another player's lap. So then people will say, well, the best teams adapt the best. True, but the best team in a meta is not necessarily the one that adapted to all the other metas best. Are you telling me that Washington Justice was the best prepared team in stage 4 for the entire meta situation that could have fallen in, and that's why they had a perfect stage? Is that... No. They locked into that position absolutely, and now it persists, and maybe it will persist, but that doesn't make it anything else than just sheer luck.
Because you can't predict, and it's only going to get worse with hero pools where, like Yiska said, we don't know exactly what meta we're going to see. We don't even know what heroes, these players are going to play. And then if you look at how Justice is playing their game, Roar, not a standout player. Aim God looked good. Arc had a couple great peels, but all in all, it feels very much about Corey. And if Corey can't play a dominant hit scan, or if they continue with this style, hopefully, it's got to be pretty obvious that this is their style at this point. Obviously, the coaching staff has got to know that. But even hearing about, hearing Packing and McGravy talk about scrims, that's what they've been doing for a while now. This is day one. Like, Corey just gets all the resources, gets to play the flanks. And if he can't do that, then this team doesn't look good. Like, this is a very one-dimensional team. They looked okay this weekend, but when you start to pair them against the rest of the field, they probably start to lose quite severely.
I don't want to bash them too much, because I was honestly surprised how solid they were on the fundamentals, in terms of what I was expecting and what I was told. This was definitely a team that is worthy of scrimming. Like, definitely can take it to the big dogs when it's all running well. It isn't just on the meta falling perfectly in their lap in terms of general communication. They didn't have those overarching issues where it's like, okay, maybe because everyone's can play comfort picks, has extra mental resources to allocate, but generally they looked
better on day one.
Yes.
They looked better in game one on their debut. Whereas, okay, if you take Justice day one, or you take just the Washington Justice and put them against Philly on day two, where they look a lot more comfortable, they look a lot more proactive, they look like they have their stuff together, right? I don't think that match looks as close as it did. You had Philly making, they kind of came into their own, especially on Temple of Anubis, and that's where things kind of got all over the place.
Yeah.
You had C9s all over the place. You had, we're giving up ticks for no reason. We're positioning really wonky. We don't really have a strategy for B other than just run through dark.
Can I open that can of worms? I think overall, if you look at the level of play comparatively from last season start, or even season one start, in terms of relative polish, Jesus Christ. Maybe it's just like that we had an unfortunate streak of bad teams playing a lot during the first two homestands, or three now. And we haven't seen the Asian teams, of course. We have only seen Shock once, NYXL twice, but yeah, it's also definitely down to the meta not being explored as much. But I think I'll just have to swallow that pill of just getting used to really scrappy Overwatch. It's not been fun to me. Some of the stuff is just so sad. The backcap that Arc did is just unforgivable for a top 5 team. You would never see that stuff happen in a more polished meta, in a more polished general position where everyone knows what they're doing, and other than freak accidents with Shock against ATL type of frame analysis type of not getting to the card type of thing. But on was it Havana?
Which one?
Where Moth doesn't get to the card and they tap in overtime. No, it wasn't Havana. It was Rialto. Yes, true.
Sure.
But yeah, I think generally polish is thoroughly missing for me, and it will get worse once the hero pools, especially
Well, okay. Well, I'm also guilty of saying it will get worse, or I feel like we're influencing this with a little bit of bias. We don't know. It could get worse. We can't talk about how wide that net is being cast until it's cast, right? We don't know exactly what's going to be pulled. We don't know exactly how hero pools is going to influence things. So it could get worse, but it's definitely not going to improve, right? It could either like stay the same, and that's a worry because it's going to be hard to improve on that if things are constantly in flux, where you're just rolling the dice, and it could get worse, it could get worse, it could get worse, and then the upside is it just stays the same again.
Yeah,
there's really no like improving it.
I don't want to attach it to specific events because I think, and I already seen in chat, it's like don't take what I'm saying to mean like attach it to these special events where people really mess up. Every engage is like this. Every engage is just a mess compared to the average engage that we saw last season and season 1. It's just so much more scrappy. Like the Rhine, like going like the rate at which basic fundamental errors happen. Ult rotations are out of whack, where teams completely split up, where Anas are on weird flanks and somehow survive, where just like obvious communication errors happen, where nobody, like the fundamentals of placing walls, how many gaps there are. This is just like the feeling of polish is not there. And I don't think we will necessarily be able to expect that. And it wasn't there for Shock either.
No, not as much. Not to the degree that we'd expect them to be at, but I think that's because it's the start of the season, right? So I think I excuse a lot of these teams because it is the start, because they're playing in a new meta. And I think we're almost being a little bit recency biased, or we're being affected by that because of how polished it was towards the end. If we go back to like season 1 or season 2 stage 1, you had Titans going game 5 against Chengdu and like the Charge. Like that doesn't happen. That's not supposed to happen. Is that, them, messing around and whatnot? Tough to say, right? There were some maps where they just looked worse on goats. They just weren't as refined. So I give them a little bit of leeway, especially like week 1, kind of, we're still in stage 1, right? So there are some teams that just look bad. And then there are some teams that at least have like a game plan where it's like, yeah, Gig might be charging on cooldown, but they're being proactive and they're finding success with it. So hopefully that refines itself. It might not because of hero pools, and they're going to have to completely change up their style, or there's a potential for that to happen. But I think there are some teams who have good, like solid fundamentals around the game. I think Philly on day 2 showed that. I think Valiant showed that they have a good head on their shoulders. They have an idea of what they want to do. A lot of it has to do with proactivity, and I like that a lot. New York kind of showed something similar week 1, but we'll see. I don't know. I think it's just too early to say that it's just all bad.
Sure. I'm just concerned that if this already looks this, like there are more factors coming in, right? It's not just the hero pools, but these teams are coming practice into the season, and then they start lacking practice once the season continues. So this will start degrading even more. And I think you gotta be like an admirer of click monkeys, clicking heads, in order to not see value lost here. But whatever, like I suppose that's what a lot of people wanted. So we'll see how it goes. I theoretically, like the May is kind of a sleeper pick, but I see potential in how that theoretically could develop. Of course, we're not going to see the maturity of that particular style, but I think we'd see just a more formulaic and more well-refined like positions where walls would place in each situation. We would see relative positioning of teams be refined and a lot more crisp. We would see counters towards certain abilities. Like last year, we saw like the evolution of how Graph was used with Graph bombs, and then like bomb against opponent Graphs and whatnot. I think we would see a lot of that in terms of what we want to actually use the wall for. Do we use it offensively to cut someone off? How does someone that is cut off still survive pretty sufficiently? We're seeing a little bit of that already. What are we using the wall against? Defensively, perhaps? In which situations do we do that? Like, depending on the heroes that we're playing. Or especially like with Orisa, with Ryan, that difference seems to be pretty monumental. And then also what kind of supports you play. I don't think it's necessarily the case that the DPS shape a lot, or the hitscan DPS shapes a lot how you want to use the ones.
Not really.
So, yeah, I think generally, because this feels like this type of refinement would be the necessary next step for a May comp. I hope we get her nerfed, and then we get an archetype where the lack of polish isn't as obvious or as unsatisfying as it is right now. Because this is speed chess, and everyone's like, wait, like, how does the rook move again? Can the rook move like this? And it's like, no, you really can't. Like, it's very obviously not the case. And this is the level of play that's the feeling I get a lot when I watch these games, and that everyone's just like hasn't figured out the fundamentals, hasn't perhaps figured out the synergistic styles, and also true for Vancouver in that regard. So
totally. Well, I think that I think they're kind of an exception to that, because I think they have found their style, and it really works for them, because they have a ton of players that have played with that kind of dive centric style a lot through Apex, and the history of the game. They've played a lot with that and found a lot of success with it, and they're translating that onto teams that aren't necessarily prepared for it, especially on points. We have people coming out and saying like, oh, I didn't expect them to run that on Hanamura, and this, that, the other thing. And obviously we don't know what Asia looks like, but the speed chess thing is kind of interesting when you look at how certain people are envisioning how hero pools will work. It's like teaching a young chess player a bunch of different openings, kind of correlating that to like hero swapping and whatnot. Whereas like, why are we teaching the young player a bunch of openings when we can just teach them one and then how to play from that? Right? We just give them a anti-fragile like archetype, which is how I think hero pools will work. We'll just plug and play different other non-core heroes to that archetype, or find replacements, and the concepts still remain the same. I don't think that things really change all that much, because we don't have time to really figure out all these other openings. So why waste the time when we can just work on this? And it might not be the most optimal, but for the people that we have, for the players that we have, for the staff that feel comfortable with it, it works for us, and you take it and run with it. So yeah, I think I'm worried that it doesn't change. I'm worried that the net isn't as defined for hero pools, meaning that the net needs to be kind of small and target specific heroes, so it's not really random. And if it's completely random, we just see a ball ban one week and nobody's playing ball, then what good is this system, right? If we're trying to help compositional diversity.
Yeah. And there's certainly ways where the Overwatch League could be very unlucky, and we get like 4-week metas where like all the wrong heroes get banned in order to not facilitate change, which some might like, some might hate. We'd see about that. I want to get onto the Florida Mayhem, and then also connected with that, a trend that I've seen over the last 2 weeks. And I want to first start out talking about Gangnam Jin. Sure. To me, it's been very interesting and sort of even illuminating to see how, like, there is not a contenders player, like, where you think, okay, this is a top 5 rookie on his position coming into the season that has bombed yet, in my opinion. Everyone you expect to be a very good player suddenly is also a very good player in the Overwatch League. It doesn't seem to be that the barrier really is that high anymore. You see Gangnam Jin coming in, he's great. You see Alarm coming in, he's great. You see Fanny Astro coming in, he's great. You see, who else is like a good XCI? Like, XCI wasn't even that big of a standout performer, but now
I only remember him for his McCree, so it's nice to see that that's kind of kicking around still. Didn't he play Flex support for a little bit? Am I misremembering that?
Who?
Didn't he play like Zen for Element Mystic for like a hot second, like on Horizon?
Not sure actually.
I don't know why I have that memory. Anywho, next.
Yeah. Burna is a good shout as well.
Yes, totally. Fantastic. Absolutely a stand-up. Glister as well.
Yeah, Glister. and we'll still see some of them. I'm thinking about the ITL guys, of course, like Hawk.
I'm crossing my fingers for Auto.
Sharp.
I am selling all my Auto stocks, but I hope he does well for Spark because he deserves to be on a good team finally.
Well, not exactly rookie, but
no, but yeah, that's true. That's true. I kind of view him as a rookie because he's just been kind of locked away on these absolutely abysmal teams. But
true, yeah. But yeah, generally, like I'm already surprised how close Contenders, especially top level, is. It might actually be a result of the Contender system that we had last year, of just like more solid support, more opportunity in terms of like we had the Atlantic Showdown, we had all those showdowns, we had the gauntlets. Like these people are getting big stage experience. And while there is some shakiness, I think we saw that with Philly, especially in their first game. I still think they arrive already performing so well that unless...
At least on day 2. Day 1, not so much.
Like, if I was a GM and I'm looking at this season, I'm just like going, okay, I can spend money on an absolute superstar, like card pay, for instance, is. And that money, that investment will probably hold up if his heroes hold up. But if I pick up the best rookies, I'm not missing either.
No, not at all. And that's where I think a lot of the criticism of like the scouting comes from, where it's like, and that's where I kind of sympathize with the scouts, even though I don't think that a position like that exists. I think it's probably just GMs and head coaches. But because we were stuck on GOATs for so long, I think that's why a lot of people were kind of excited to see that these rookies did perform as well, because we haven't seen them play a lot of other heroes in God knows how long. So it was kind of up in the air. Does Carpe still have it? How good is Alarm when he's playing against the best teams in the world and not on the GOATs, and obviously coming from Contenders Korea and not having a great season. But yeah, I think hopefully if we don't see such a rigid meta that kind of goes away, where we can start to build out, the eye test a little bit more and say, hey, no, this player is actually good. To hear that KSP didn't really get a ton of looks until Valiant came in, and we're like, how is this player not signed yet?
Yeah, KSP,
that's kind of scary, right? Like that's not something you necessarily want in your game, where people like that are just falling through the cracks and then just kind of being left on their own in the wasteland and just kind of like left to starve.
Also, Elevote, by the way, just like I feel like I felt like my monologue earlier was sort of like way more anti-Washington Justice than I intended it to be. Like I think they are a really positive surprise, despite like all the luck element I want to ascribe to their success now. Sure. I still think there are elements to their play that exceed just that particular luck factor, and where they look more solid and honestly look like more solid than the others right now.
Oh, totally.
So like I like
Elevotes specifically on the Diva, and I think that the Orisa comps will start to kind of rotate out and be very map and submap specific. I think there are a lot of teams that are just kind of leaning on that from the preseason because it works for them right now, but I think they're going to have to start rotating off, and I think Philly's one of those teams. But Elevote in general, like surprisingly good. I'd say definitely above average. Like I wasn't a huge fan of Poco in general. Still kind of weird not to see Fury in there, but there are some arguments that could lend to why we're not seeing him. Language issues. Is it new Diva and being aggressive? Is that a problem? I can't imagine that he wouldn't be able to figure that style out. But we saw somebody like Huyal obviously fall off the map when the Matrix changes came in. So could be something similar. I don't know. Maybe that's a stretch.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they just like teams just have very defined, like, I think it's sort of like the strike effect from last season, where it was like,
okay,
you tell a player you're the specialist for this hero.
Okay.
And they probably also become better or close to the starter in the other meta. Now, what do you tell this player if his hero is meta and he's not playing?
Right.
And I mean, it's the player's responsibility to be better than the other guy that hasn't been like just playing that entire hero, and he probably shouldn't be played if he isn't at least equal. But if they are equal, then you should play that player, unless it somehow destroys your comp structure, because otherwise it will destroy your culture. So if you have a guy like Poco on there, and he like is told to, for instance, like practice a bunch of Orisa, and they decide to run Orisa, you run him on Orisa. Doesn't necessarily mean that he's like transcendentally better on Orisa than Fury is. He just needs to be better in order for that the team culture to sustain itself. And then also down the line, once the volatility of this season sets in, when those players, these special, like these, I don't want to say specialists because it sounds like I'm talking about one hero. I'm talking about like you're giving the duty of these heroes to this guy and the duty of this heroes to this guy, and then there's some overlap. But when that guy hits his champion and the other guy had no practice time on it, then they should be shining in terms of. I think that's kind of my point, though, is that I think in general, the coaching staff for Philly will start to lean more towards the diva. I think it's more successful on a wider variety of maps. So sure.
The weird part is why didn't we see Fury? Is that just what they prepared for week 1? Okay, I can understand that. Like we're still kind of leaning on that Orisa from the preseason. But I hope to see that integrated if that's kind of how the model is, where it's, you know, Pokus being a little bit more flexible, where Fury is just focusing on the diva and focusing on, you know, other heroes. You know, we saw a little bit of Zarya from week 1. Can't imagine that we're going to see a whole lot more of that, but hopefully we start to see Fury integrated, because I think diva is the way to go on the majority of maps.
Yeah, the thing is, I could see how they are still working out their communication structure, especially with another.
Totally. Like if I can understand that. Yeah.
Right. So you don't want to drop matches, especially against presumably lesser teams.
Yeah. Teams just you should be able to beat.
Yeah. And there's no assurance that this will pay off in the long run either, because we don't know what the long run looks like. Totally. So you might as well maximize every match win, and then just look like a little bit into the future what's happening. I could totally see where they were just like, well, this comp needs less pristine execution and communication. Let's run this. It's safer. We got our starters here. Like Poco is a known quantity. Maybe Fury has to still adapt to that communication structure, even though yes, he has experience from working in a big roster before Overwatch League. But then again, it's like why would you try that, especially at your own homestand? Let's not forget that. You don't want to lose at your own homestand and like invest into a Fury that might not put out the performance that a Poco would put out in that regard on that hero, when you could just like do that. If it's another homestand, I don't know if that changes anything, but yeah, I think that's probably the rationale. And then maybe they actually thought that this had some stylistic advantage over or like a curveball mentality.
I think it's a lot of the things. It's a culmination of a lot of things, like you said. Like I would still kind of throw in that this is probably what they've been practicing, and like you said, it's an ease of execution argument. It's a communication, you know, are they on board with that style? Do they still want to be able to play the Orisa on swaps? You know, it probably gives them the best. It's maybe not the most optimal, but it gives them the best chance for success. So yeah, I would agree with a lot of that.
Yeah,
what you're saying.
Yeah. It's kind of all over the place, I guess. Anyway, now in terms of topics, I guess one thing that I really wanted to address, even though we've sort of like finished that Outlaws subject, but I think it's worth talking about what it means for an Overwatch League team when their players are not in top condition to play the match. There were definitely players on that roster that were actively playing that also at the flu.
Totally.
I'm not sure if...
Pretty sure Raucus was sick.
Yeah. I heard Jaxay was as well. And as much as people in comment sections like to point out that Michael Jordan played with the flu as well. Like, that's an outstanding athlete that is like a once in a lifetime situation in a game that it requires more physicality than necessarily like mental. Is it acuity?
Accuracy, acuity, sharpness. Yeah.
So that take, like like if you're coming out with that take, the only thing you are realistically dunking is your Dunkin' Donuts like Krispy Kreme into warm hot fudge or something. Like, that's such a armchair analyst take that it's. I'm not trying. I think we've been quite clear in not trying to defend the Outlaws in this episode.
No.
But there are certainly circumstances, and it opens a wider discussion on illness during travel. By the way, a lot of other...
It's going to get worse. Well, everybody's going to get sick because the human body is not meant to be traveling that much.
Yeah, a lot of the ATL was at the homestand in order for some media stuff. They had sick guys, like part of the production crew was sick. Everyone gets sick. That's just the nature of it. And it will be interesting to see how teams cope with that. It seems to me that being proactive in that regard, in terms of like educating players about like risk factors, minimizing these risk factors in your day-to-day and whatnot, will also be key this season. And then, we'll have to see. Now, the question is, how much does it actually impact play? It certainly doesn't improve it, I would think.
Not at all.
And I think I didn't take it as an excuse that this was mentioned by Outlaw staff on Twitter. I think they were quite... honest about taking the responsibility for that. And while that is not used as an excuse and should not be seen by anyone as an excuse, it certainly is a factor that we should be considering this season.
I also don't really, I'm not on board with the whole idea that these teams are somehow beholden to the fans and they have to be able to explain themselves when they don't look good. And it seems, and I'm not positive if other teams really face that, but I see that a lot with Houston, where it's like, Houston does poorly. Why don't you tell us why? Because it's none of your business. That's why.
Yeah.
If everything was transparent, it would only get worse. There's probably a number of reasons why this team didn't perform.
Yeah. Also, by the way, okay. Disclaimer, I'm not saying this is the case here, but very often when such a thing happens in Overwatch League and a team does not say what actually happened, it has a lot to do with what was dictated to them by the system, and they cannot throw that system under the bus, and they just have to take it. I'm talking about, in the past, for instance, media obligations were a huge obstacle, were seriously impacting performances in the Overwatch League. Straight up. Like, how can you expect people to fly around when they have to practice and when they're definitely not in the mood for that? And stuff like this. Sometimes it's stuff of the org. I remember the Defiant stuff, like them flying out when they were technically still in the running for play-ins. Like, we get it, but this is a circumstance that a good management will also take into account when evaluating their staff's performance. How much did we actually enforce that on them? Or how much did the league enforce on them? How much power did they have? And the failings that they have, in which areas did that happen? Did it happen in the stuff they can change? Or did it happen in the areas where their hands were tied and they are just given the blueprint? And once again, I'm not saying, actually, seriously don't know what happened. So I don't know if there was some circumstances like this, but understand there is a good reason to be cryptic.
You don't, anything an underperformance can come from almost anything. You think about your life. If we're going to constantly compare it to, oh, well, I go to work sick all the time and I can perform.
It's not the same.
Your job also doesn't demand you to be the top percent in your field. And if it does, then I would wager you probably don't perform as good. You're probably lacking in some way, right? Like, I don't think that's a fair assumption. And to compare against, these case studies like Michael Jordan, it's like, how much of a goalpost move do you need? Like, that is such a stretch. And I don't think it's right to like, just, I don't know. I don't know if the correct move is to just, laugh at them and just make fun of them, or just be like, no, you can't think like this. This is not like, I don't even know if engaging with them is the right idea either, but you have to be cryptic to kind of keep people safe. Not in the sense that like, oh, they're in danger. No, they're just things that happen personally to some people. Not saying this happened in Outlaws, but using this as a case study, the public doesn't need to know exactly what happened. Especially if it's more than just being sick. And if it was just being sick, okay, they were sick, move on. But it's not, don't expect that kind of response. You're not entitled to this.
It's also, I think people really don't understand how much unlike a real job it is.
Yeah.
I would say, and I'm honestly, I think I don't know, but I asked around, and the average amount of hours that people work, even including the off season, especially staff, is 70 hours a week.
That's the problem, is that the average person doesn't view that as work. And maybe some of the players don't either, but it's still the case that you're working. You're either playing, you're studying, you're watching.
Like if that's your attitude, what do you mean? Like, did you choose a career you just absolutely hate? And that's like, it's drudgery.
Yes.
Does it have to be drudgery? Do you suck at life, mate? If that's the case, you actually suck at life, mate.
But I think that's the general kind of life expectancy for a lot of people. You go to 9 to 5, you eat and cash checks. That's it. I go to my 9 to 5. I hate it. I have a hobby at home and I suck it up and I deal with it. And that's the kind of mentality that we're applying to these people who have a better job that I wish I had, in this hypothetical. And
of course, also not willing to do anything for that.
No,
like, yeah, it's
just not fair. So if you ever try to have that argument, or if that thoughts pop in your head, please don't. No,
yeah, it's really not comparable. It really isn't.
Not at all. And it's not a difficulty. It's not, maybe your job is very hard, right? Maybe you are just a coal miner and that is a very hard job. Hats off to you. You do a very difficult and a hard task, but they're not the same. Just leave it at that.
Yeah. I don't know, especially like personally as a cushy German, like we don't work that much a year anyway. Like if I'm like, okay, if the average German is sick, they just go to the doctor and they have sick leave.
Yeah, you're fine.
No problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Don't have that here.
Yeah, don't have that there, and definitely don't have that in the Overwatch League.
Sure, 100%. And that's what blows my mind with Pre. That's what absolutely just like my third eye opened and I became the Buddha for a moment. Like, you realize that these players are going to get run into the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need a deep roster for this season to work. Yeah. Like we started telling you that preseason. Now, by no means are we trying to like run around and tell teams how to work, but it's like, you realize that you're going to need replacement players, either for visas or for sick issues or for burnout. Yeah. Or a culmination of all the things. Yeah. You need replacements, or you need some sort of, safety nets, whether it's two-way players or it's, having a player that can be role flexible or just having, stand-ins. Yeah. So to have such a small roster and then defend it. Yeah. I'm just like, I don't see how.
Yeah. I think that's the best argument against it. I can very well believe that they require all the team to be very flexible in order to keep the synergy between the players. Fine argument. But the elephant in the room is this is a really, really hard structure where you cannot expect 6 people to just like go hard, never get sick, never get burned out over the entire season. And that is your system is lacking redundancy. And as soon as the first chaos hits, you're just hurting so hard.
Yeah. Real fast, and we normally don't do this, but I really like this point. For Overwatch says, I hope no one's pressured to play on stage while sick. I don't think anybody's pressuring them but themselves.
Yeah.
These are competitors at the end of the day. They want to play. They know that if they don't play, the team will perform badly. So they push themselves.
Yep.
That is a very analogous point to Michael Jordan, right? Like, he knew he shouldn't be playing. The coaching staff probably knew he shouldn't be playing, but he did it anyways.
They played. What do you want? They didn't perform Michael Jordan like, but they were sick players playing. What's the deal? Like,
I don't think Flames holding a gun to their head saying, you better play or I'm gonna, nobody's getting their house taken away. No, these players wanted to play.
Yeah. Also,
I can't speak for the whole league in that sense. I wouldn't imagine that there would be, orgs, holding people hostage and demanding that they play, but obviously we don't want these players to play sick. I think we can all agree with that, but at the end of the day, it's going to be difficult to kind of stop them from doing that.
Yeah.
Obviously you have the end all be all, you have the veto power there, but if that's the only player you have, that's all you got.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is like filling out that role so you don't have to be put in a situation.
Let me check. I think even not sure if let me check something. Okay. Yeah. Dream even said on Twitter, like, the staff had it. Staff is also sick.
They're sick.
Right?
So what do you do then? Your coach is sick.
Yeah. So it's a bad situation, and it's something, once again, where shit has to hit the fan. You cannot account for all the buts and ifs and all the rough scenarios. All you can do is build a certain redundancy in your system that then allows you to gain from it comparatively to others, where the others are less prepared. You can fill in that situation, and then at the end of the season, it's sort of, you see some of your structural improvements to bear fruit. Hopefully, often it doesn't. Often people aren't checked on the things where they cheaped out on. So, but that's the difference between long-term great performing teams like the NMXL, for instance, and teams that don't, where they don't have the scope and of it generally. Yep. Is there any game that you still want to talk about? Just to wrap it up, is there anything that you took away from this weekend?
Interesting points. Not necessarily a game in particular. I think there are examples from games that are kind of noteworthy, but obviously, sitting in Discord talking, you can go to, I think it's Yiska Discord. What is it? What's the Discord link for the official Discord?
Discord.me/Yiska out. I think it is.
That's the link. We try to view the games, do kind of like a non-official watch along or a companion stream. I think that's what they're being called at the moment. So check those out. But this past weekend while we were watching, nano boosts kind of were a big talking point in how teams are using that. And I think you're going to see a lot of teams use them stylistically. I think we're seeing a lot of teams do it poorly, but there are teams who are more reactive with it. There are teams that are more proactive with their nano boosts. I think Packington and McGravy on Sideshow stream, I believe it was, talked about, nanoing divas as they're super aggressive and allowing them to pressure the backline a little bit more. I think that's super cool. The use of Orisa, I think, is an interesting case point where I think, again, like we mentioned with the Philly discussion, I think that's probably going to slowly die off on outside of maps that are inherently brawly, like Horizon Point A, certain submaps on Nepal, certain submaps on Lijiang. Though that's where I think you're really only going to see Orisa and even Zarya comps to a lesser extent. But Diva's just too good not to play at the moment. 3-second boosters is pretty insane. Like you get to be aggressive and then get out really, really safely. Like it's pretty gross. And you get to, deny a ton of abilities. It's an obvious kind of counter to May ult. You can eat nades. You can just do so much.
Yeah.
It's too good not to have, even though there are some maps where it's negligible. It just covers a lot of bases. So Yeah, other than that, not too much. Next week, it's not going to be. There are some interesting games next week, but we'll talk about that Wednesday.
Definitely, yeah. Generally, like the teams one has to look forward to. I think Philly definitely got more solid over the weekend.
It was night and day.
Had me a little worried at first, but it makes sense. Like, I think, for instance, Astro at the World Cup didn't show everything that he had. It seemed like he was a little jittery there. Alarm, of course, has to be almost considered a veteran. I'm not sure if he has these like huge cards in his past. And generally,
I think he kind of got thrown under the bus, though. I think because they're so lenient on moving away from Orisa, like they really want to stick with that for right now because, like you said, the ease of execution and how much they've practiced with it. I think Baptiste kind of lends itself to that. But on day 2, you saw them kind of adapt and you run a lot of Ana. And if you compare Gangnam Jin to Alarm, like just in terms of like damage done or just like watching the game and seeing what team is purple more, Alarm hits nades like nobody's business. This kid gets a ton of value out of nade.
Yeah,
especially Anti. That could be because he doesn't have to heal his team. Obviously, that goes without saying when you beat a team pretty convincingly. So, but definitely solid overall, and I think again, hopefully we see more Diva from them because the Orisa pigeonholes them.
Anything to say about Ivy?
Good. Weirdly good. I didn't know who exactly was going to be playing either him or EQO. And for somebody who, is kind of known, at least from talking to the Defiant coaching staff, to have some nerve issues, didn't seem like it at all.
No.
I think solid May performance overall and had some absolute, sick moments. Again, I do remember him, playing a little bit of disc golf. That needs to stop. I think on a lot of teams, we're just kind of throwing some May ults around.
Sure.
And again, it's a really important ult, so we don't want to just have those eaten. But I can also understand, the whole we don't, the enemy team doesn't expect it, so we can kind of get away with it. It's that gamble. Try not to gamble too much, I guess it would be my point.
Yeah, I think like it surprised me that I didn't. Okay. I thought there was definitely a possibility that Ivy would be starting on a lot of heroes ahead of EQO.
Sure.
I didn't think May would be one of them. It seems to me the hero requires a bunch of communication. He probably isn't good at that. I think the hero requires a lot of like tape and then calculated with your team type of stuff.
Decision making.
Sure. Yeah. The thing is, I don't think Ivy is bad at decisions making. Ivy is great at subconscious decisions making.
Yeah, it's very instinctual.
Yeah, like it's like whoever has seen this guy playing Korean contenders before they're defined knows he's just like he's ferocious and looks. It's not as much as like his gameplay isn't measured. It's like where he could articulate to you why he's doing certain things. I think he's just like instinctually just knows what's happening. And I didn't take May to be a hero that supports that particular skill set. But yeah, certainly interesting. Also makes me wonder what heroes EQ would play ahead of Ivy on then.
Yeah. Because
I don't see like him starting like even for a Genji meta. Nope. Ivy is still a great play on that. I think what other heroes could we see him on? I think New Hansel with that projectile speed is probably a toss-up. We could
still kind of give it to Ivy at that point. Like I'm thinking of more of the. It's not even really fair to say, but like the big brain, like you got to think about it. Heroes, almost like a Bastion, where it's like, okay, where do I siege? How do I siege? Where is my team positioned? How do I get into position? What do I have to do?
Guys,
May, definitely is bizarre.
Guys, he just said big brain heroes like Bastion. How does that feel?
Hey, I think it's not as straightforward as people give it credit. Like that's not a simple hero to just plug and play.
Yeah,
I think there's some big decisions to be made that win you games. It's not intuitive, but I think it's a lot harder than you'd think.
I think it's also very easy to just say, Bastion, breathe now. And the Bastion is like, and just sit down here. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, you could. I think you could micromanage a Bastion play. Like in the bunker meta, I think you definitely could just have set rotations to do that. But it's also there are some plays, especially like I don't remember even who it was, but I think there were plays in like Hanamura in particular, like in the bunker meta. I think at Gauntlet, where these weren't set plays, where it was just an audible call, and you just kind of have to know what you're doing on Bastion.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, majority of the time you could micromanage him. So maybe it's not as hard as I make it out to seem.
Okay, so last point. I think this was a long time coming. This narrative we've developed over the years almost. Mm-hmm. We had Chris on, and he said that no player spoke out against Sado. After the two first games, what's your feeling on that? Did they make a good choice?
Yeah, I think this is finally the road to redemption for Sado. I think this, after not playing much of season 1 and then having kind of a mediocre performance and late into season 1, and then season 2 just being the GOATS meta, which again, talked to Christopher, weren't really great on. Kind of mental boom them all season. Was not their style of play. And now we're seeing them have a full kind of experience in the off season and practicing, and it looks different and it looks fantastic. Like, I'm glad to see Sado actually perform well and make calls that are almost ballsy, right? Like going 4v1 on Temple of Anubis, going in that corridor and just swinging. That's the kind of calls that you need your main tank to be able to make, and he's actually pretty good at them. He constantly is doing these calls where it's kind of reminiscent of Ivy, where it is instinct. It looks very instinctual, where it's just like if you think about it too much, you're just going to miss the window. So you just have to pull the trigger, and he can pull the trigger. It looked great, very improved, like already like a candidate for like most improved player.
Sure.
So sick, very very sick player.
Which of course also, like as always, like it's also. There are so many interdependencies to a player doing well, doing badly. Like, for instance, like when you think about, okay, why did Meko not look that great this weekend? Well, because nobody's telling him where the McCree is currently standing, for instance. I'm not sure. Just like a hypothetical, right? And a lot of that type of skill is probably also very reliant on the players you're playing with, the communication structure, stuff like that. I think it makes sense that once his teammates arguably are greatly updated in terms of like, not sure if, I think it's a slight upgrade on the main support position. It's a big upgrade on the flex support position. It's definitely more diversity on the DPS, and then most definitely like an upgrade just because of the choice that they get with Fury. That overall, Sado in a system like this would also start to look better. Just makes sense. Yep. Also, just because how reliant main tank is. On the
now we can praise him all we want, though, and he did look good. But to our point earlier, Homeboy's gonna get sick. He's gonna get burned out. You still need somebody to replace him. Whether that's Poco, learning some
maybe
some main
Poco,
tanks.
yeah. Yep.
It's possible, right? Like as long as you have, a system in place so that isn't a problem.
Yep.
Okay, fine. Then that's fair. But I don't back off the criticism of lack of depth at main tank in particular. So hopefully, who knows? Is that what Fury's doing? Is he learning Winston? I don't know.
Do you think Overwatch teams should forbid team orgies where they just like share that viral?
What?
I'm not saying it. I was close to saying it, but
yeah, the filter, thank God it saved us.
Yeah, that's the John in my head, just going like, don't
say it.
Don't
cut him off.
Yeah.
Cut the mic.
But yeah, I think that's a fair shout. That's the part where the vulnerability for Fusion is. They're generally otherwise pretty well prepared.
I'd say so.
By the way, speaking of preparation, I guess we can sort of start wrapping up. In terms of like stuff that I'm trying to do this week, I have an idea for a piece, just like how teams now, because like stealing ideas from teams now in terms of the setup is very hard because it takes so much time to adapt it. So some teams were open with their approach and their incremental and detail-oriented changes that they've made. And for instance, especially Atlanta, and I'm not going to say what the thing is that they did, but I think they have an inherent advantage based on the infrastructure that the coaches chose. And I'll have a piece on that. I think, for instance, what Moth is trying to do with his little scrim PC in his, or his practice PC in his luggage is a great idea.
Totally.
I think some teams did a way better job in preparing their plays in terms of that. And that just like these, I guess it fills into our overall point. Organizational structure, we preached it before the season. It will be so important. Now it's rearing its head in some way. Sickness, how can you protect players from that? How do you have players as backups when they get sick? Practice, there's not enough practice areas. What can you do when the homestand only gives you the limited amount of time of practice? Teams have just prepare for that. So it is interesting to see how the weighting of trying to find these solutions work, and I think that's going to be a piece this week, previous piece tomorrow, and then I'll probably step out of Overwatch and write something else. What do you have? What? Jesus Christ! What do you have planned for this fine week?
Probably going to return to Fusion. Talk about Alarm. I had this idea that, and it's kind of bunk now, but I still think Alarm deserves a shout as being, you know, a home run predicted and hit. But the original idea was kind of like to talk about the Elite Four kind of flex supports, like Jonak, Twilight, Violet, and then I don't even remember, Shu, I think it was. But now that Violet's not playing, that kind of goes away. So Alarm in general, like is going to be a standout player. I think that's going to continue, especially next week. But again, we'll talk about that Wednesday. So that might be a piece. I'm going to start doing a little bit more video content with the replay viewer. I'm going to be breaking down specific points. Not so much just like a long drawn out VOD review. I think people kind of check out on those, but you know, still keeping with the short timeline.
Sure.
And just kind of breaking down specific either plays or points or strategies, stuff like that. And then obviously predictions this week. Definitely check out those. And then something else. I don't know. We'll figure out later in the week.
Definitely.
But yeah, pretty much that's it. Go read the latest on GG Recon about how these bottom teams should be paying up, supporting their tier 2 Overwatch. You know, bottom teams taking kind of a note out of Flashpoint's book in CS:GO. Let's start finding bad teams. Let's hold them accountable and use that money to have more lands, support player, rookie player scouting and whatnot. So go take a gander at that.
Nice. All right. I think we've demonstrated enough the value that John brings to this podcast with this. I noticed that my thoughts cannot be as structured when I'm already thinking about, oh no, oh no, oh no.
We're rambling.
Like we completely failed in the structure that we had in mind. We wanted to go game by game. We went like by
tangent.
So in that production, of course, absolute horseshit in comparison. And I hope we have him back soon. Yes. And thank you. I'm surprised that still so many people tuned in for this mess. Maybe it will go down from here, but we'll see. I hope we didn't destroy and disenfranchise too many people with this. And otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on Wednesday.